I'm so happy that I can now have a cup of tea and a biscuit while I'm filming. What a life. Hello, my name is Miranda and today I'm going to be talking to you about all the books that I read in September. I'm filming this on the 5th of October and currently my August wrap up is not even edited. It's been filmed for about 3 weeks. I haven't edited it yet or uploaded it, but I'm filming this one in the wild, naive hope that I will get that one up fairly soon. I have a lot to do, don't judge me. So anyway, this is all the books that I read in September. Let's get started. September was a slightly weird reading month for me because I read a lot. I read 7 books, but in the last like 2 weeks I haven't finished a book. The first book I finished in September was The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This book is really popular. I'm very happy because I love Elizabeth Acevedo's spoken word poetry, and when it was announced, I don't know, like 3 years ago that she was writing a YA novel, I was so excited about it, and I have been ever since because I was sure that I would love it. And I really did. I really enjoyed this. It didn't connect with me particularly personally, which is fine. Not all books have to do that, but I was really impressed with what it managed to do. This follows Xiomara, who's from a Dominican family living in New York, and she wants to become a spoken word poet. She's kind of finding her voice and discovering her sexuality, but her mother especially is incredibly religious and very conservative and very restrictive on what she can do. It's about her finding her voice in poetry, finding herself creatively, her family dynamics, and falling in love for the first time, I suppose. All the relationships are really nuanced and I loved watching them play out. There is a beautiful relationship between Xiomara and her twin, who is kind of coming to terms with his sexuality as well. This book is written as a series of poems, which I loved, as it meant that I felt I got really close to Xiomara, as it's implied that these are poems that she is writing. It's a really lovely device to get close to a character, I think, especially as, you know, it makes perfect sense because she's a poet and she's writing, so it's lovely to read the poems and read her thoughts as poems. It also means that Acevedo can achieve quite a lot with very few words, which I love. I will say that the ending of this felt a little bit rushed for me. It was a little bit convenient, and I would have loved more exploration of the family's healing process, and also more about Xiomara's twin. But overall, this is a really refreshing, different YA story, and I would really recommend it. The next book I finished I don't have with me, but it's I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. I gave this 4 stars. Again, I'm really late to the party on this one, but I really enjoyed it. This is a book that is all about death, but it is so full of life. That sounds like such a cliche, but it's true. It's full of humanity and just beautiful language that I found really enjoyable to read, even though this book is about all of Maggie O'Farrell's near-death experiences. Essentially, it's called it's subtitled 17 Brushes with Death, so it details all of the different times that she has come close to death, which is a lot. And they're not like, some of them you're like, you know, that's a bit of a cop-out, but most of them it's like, wow, that's terrifying. She writes so beautifully about these experiences that it feels so real. So I would not recommend this if you don't want to read about an almost plane crash, several almost drownings, and a couple of almost murders. Like, just don't go there. You can skip on this one. It's a really thought-provoking and moving account of a life lived like with a really strong awareness that, as Morticia Adams says in the Addams Family musical, death is just around the corner. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, I would really recommend it. It's beautiful, it really is. and it's a really interesting way of writing a memoir, and I loved it. The next book I read was The Darkness by Ragnar Jónasson, which I gave 3 stars. This is translated from Icelandic by someone. Victoria Cribb. This is a thriller. I don't read thrillers that often, but I really enjoyed this one. It was a good time. It was really propulsive and a very good companion for a long train journey. Highly recommend. This follows a detective, Hulda Hermannsdottir, who is forced into early retirement. She's given the opportunity to re-look into a cold case to fill her kind of her 2 last weeks at work, and she chooses the case of a Russian asylum seeker called Yelena, who was found dead in a kind of deserted cove, and the people who investigated the crime ruled it a suicide after not a very thorough investigation. This book is really gripping, and it follows 3 different perspectives, all of which I enjoyed, which make it really fast paced. There are 2 mysteries to uncover, obviously what happened to Yelena, and then also the dark secrets of Hulda's past. Generally, I found that Hulda's character was really interesting, especially given that she is an older woman, she's in her 60s, and she is really passionate about her job, but she makes a lot of mistakes in this book, and there are lots of times where she messes up, and you know, she's very flawed, but also a really great character, which I think is something that we don't really see for older women. The ending really surprised me, but there was a villain monologue which they annoy me. I don't like it, where the villain kind of, you know, sits down and is like, this is why I did everything, this is how it all happened, I'm going to explain it all to you. But I still really enjoyed the ending. I thought it was fascinating, and it kind of hit me in a way that I wasn't expecting. Hello, Sam. Mostly I enjoyed how the narrative weaves in lots of different stories of women who've been disregarded and ignored. I thought that was really, really well done. And also it was just a fun ride. I enjoyed finding out what happened, so yeah, it's a good one. Next up we have the first book I read for university this term, only because this was the first reading list that I got, so I started with this one, and that is The Reader by Bernhard Schlink. This is translated from German by Carol Brown Janeway, and I didn't like this book at all. This follows a young boy who, I think he's 15, and he starts and he has an affair with a woman in her 30s. Great start. But it's not just an affair with a woman in her 30s, it's a deeply unhealthy and abusive affair with a woman in her 30s who also just happens to be a Nazi. Good times. I am looking forward to discussing this book with people, because I think there is definitely a lot of really interesting stuff in there, especially about, you know, what we do when we're faced with really difficult choices, like become a Nazi or not. But overall, I did not enjoy it. Like I said, the relationship was deeply disturbing to me and really put me off. And also, I couldn't find any justification for it anywhere else in the book. I think it happened, made the main character, the narrator, obsessed with Hannah, this woman who he's having an affair with, so that then when he finds out that she's on trial for being a Nazi guard, he is really invested and cares about her and is like, oh, I want her to, you know, be, what's the word, exonerated in some way, I think. But also the style I just found really boring and not a good time generally, and I was mostly just bored and annoyed. Great. Also, the ending is such a cop-out. It's such a cop-out. I don't understand it. If you've read this book, please talk to me about it, because I will just scream about it to you for about 5 minutes or longer if you let me. Anyway, yeah, don't read this. It's not worth your time. Next up, a book that is worth your time, The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This book, and the trilogy that this book is from, has won like all the awards, all the fantasy awards. Everyone loves it. It's great. I also loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I don't think it's a perfect book. I did have a couple of little niggles with it, but mostly it starts off kind of confusing, but I think if you push through the confusion, you get to an amazing, unique world with some fascinating characters and a really compelling plot. And what more could you really ask for in a fantasy novel? All you should know about this going in is that it is a dark fantasy novel about a world which kind of feels like our world if we really fuck things up. Basically where the earth is always fighting against its inhabitants, and through volcanoes and earthquakes and all that fun stuff, but there are people in this world who can kind of control these volcanoes and earthquakes, which is obviously useful. There are some things that weren't explained particularly well because the narrator just sort of figured it out, and it was assumed that the reader would as well. Maybe I'm just stupid, but maybe I'm just stupid. It sums it up really. But it made me kind of feel a bit left behind because it felt like I should know what was happening, even though I didn't quite get what was happening. I was so invested in the world and the characters and the story that it really doesn't matter to me, that I didn't know what the hell was going on sometimes. So yeah, the ending of this was also incredibly moving, and I'm so excited to read the rest of the trilogy. This book has a kind of creepy, fantastical school element to it as well. So I think it, partly because of that, but also just because of the general kind of dark atmosphere and mystery, I think it would make a really good autumn book. So yeah, I liked it. It was good. The next book I read was my second book that I read for university this year, and that is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. I struggled with this book. It's not an easy read. It's hard. It's hard work. This book seems like it's trying to criticise imperialism in lots of ways, as it kind of exposes it as something that is hypocritical and violent and just greedy. But it also manages to be insanely racist with all of the fun, you know, colonial stereotypes that you can think of, which makes it an interesting book to read and study, but not an enjoyable one. I'm glad I read it and I got a lot out of talking to people about it, but I wouldn't recommend it. Don't read it unless you want to suffer. There you go, that's the sub. The last book I read in September I don't have with me because I read it on audiobook, and that is This Green and Pleasant Land by Ayisha Malik. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 3.5 stars, I think. This is a kind of contemporary novel about a British Muslim family who live in a very small rural English village. It follows what happens to their community when Bilal, who's the main character, gets asked by his mum, literally on her deathbed, if he can build a mosque in this tiny rural English village. This book is really funny, even though it deals with a lot of difficult topics, and there are loads of really interesting, weird characters that are very familiar as someone who grew up in a tiny English village. It's kind of like a sitcom set in a little village, and there's loads of drama. It's a fun time. It was a bit slow occasionally, but I enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm glad I read it. So yeah, a mixed bunch. Here they are. Aren't they beautiful? It was a weird one, but I did it. That's all I can really say. First month of university. Second year's a bitch. It's really funny. It's a funny book about hate crimes.
I so nearly just like, it's hilarious, but also about hate.
It is!